They dig up the body at midnight. The village priest is there, the mayor is there, and when they pry open the coffin, the corpse inside looks wrong. The skin is flushed, the lips are dark with what looks like fresh blood, the stomach is bloated, and the villagers standing around that grave don't see a dead man, they see a monster that needs to be destroyed. It's 1725, and we're in the Serbian village of Medvedja. This is Ottoman-controlled territory, a patchwork of desperate farming communities scraping a living from hard soil, caught between empires and terrified of forces they couldn't name. These weren't uneducated people by the standards of their time. They kept records, they elected local councils, they traded, they planned harvests, but they lived in a world where illness arrived without warning, where neighbors died in clusters, and where medicine was still largely guesswork wrapped in prayer. The man in that coffin was named Arnold Pauli. He'd been a soldier, then a farmer. Before he died, in a mundane accident, a fall from a hay wagon, he had confided to neighbors something troubling. While stationed in Turkish Serbia, he believed a vampire had fed on him. He'd followed the old folk remedies, eating dirt from the creature's grave, smearing himself with its blood. He thought he had cured himself. He was wrong. Within weeks of his death, 4 people in Medvedja fell sick and died with Pauli's name on their lips. That's when the village council did something extraordinary. They didn't pray and hope, they petitioned Austrian imperial authorities for an official investigation. And here's what most people don't know. The Austrians sent actual medical surgeons, trained medical professionals, men with scalpels and notebooks, because this wasn't just a folk panic. This was a legal, documented, bureaucratic process with paperwork that survives to this day. The surgeons exhumed Pauli and 3 others. Their reports are meticulous and deeply unsettling. They documented bodies that showed what they described as signs of undeath, blood still liquid in the cavities, skin appearing fresh, limbs flexible. By their lights, their observations were evidence. What they were actually witnessing, we now know, was normal decomposition. In cold soil, in certain conditions, a body can bloat with gas, push blood back toward the surface, preserve flexibility for weeks. The flushed appearance, the dark lips, the seeming fullness of life, all chemistry, not the supernatural. But in 1725, without that knowledge, faced with a cluster of mysterious deaths and bodies that refused to look properly dead, their conclusion felt inevitable. They staked the corpses, they burned them, they declared the village safe. And then, 5 years later, it happened again. 17 people dead in Medvedja within 3 months. Again, the council wrote to the Austrians. Again, a team arrived, this time larger, more official. The Imperial Contagion Commission, led by regimental field surgeon Johann Flickinger. His report, Visum et Repertorum, Seen and Reported, was published in 1732. It circulated across Europe. It was read in coffee houses in Vienna, London, and Paris. Voltaire mentioned it. It triggered a continent-wide vampire panic that lasted decades. Here's the twist that history books skip. The Austrian Empire had a significant financial and political interest in this entire region. The Habsburgs had recently wrestled the Balkans from Ottoman control. This territory was contested, unstable, and full of populations they needed to pacify and tax. A formal imperial response to village terror wasn't just compassionate governance, it was statecraft. Sending military surgeons to Serbian peasant villages told those communities, "We are your protectors, your administrators, your legitimate rulers." It built loyalty. It extended bureaucratic reach into communities that had been self-governing under the Ottomans for centuries. And the publication of Flickinger's report? That was a political instrument. It reached educated European audiences and framed the Balkans as a place of exotic, primitive superstition, a region that needed modern, rational, Western governance. The vampire panic helped justify imperial expansion. It painted Serbian and Romanian communities as backward peoples requiring civilized management. The monster in the grave wasn't just a theological problem, it was a PR opportunity. Meanwhile, real people were dying. Whatever was actually killing the villagers of Medvedja, and the most credible modern theories center on tuberculosis, which spreads through families and communities in exactly the clustering pattern documented there, went undiagnosed and untreated, while everyone focused on the graves. The church, the imperial authorities, the village councils, all of them were staking corpses, while the actual contagion moved silently through the living. This is still happening, not with vampires, but with the same basic mechanism. Institutions, when confronted with illness or tragedy they cannot control, manufacture explanations that serve their own authority rather than the people suffering. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, tuberculosis killed millions across the United States and Europe. Doctors knew it was contagious, but sanatorium companies, profitable private institutions, had no incentive to alarm the public into demanding truly aggressive public health responses. The messaging was carefully managed. In rural New England, the same vampire exhumation rituals seen in Medvedja were being performed as late as 1892. Mercy Brown of Exeter, Rhode Island. Her body dug up, her heart burned, the ashes mixed into medicine for her dying brother. The medical establishment knew this was superstition. They said so publicly. But they didn't explain why her neighbors were actually dying. Because the honest answer, poverty, malnutrition, overcrowded housing, a bacterium spreading through shared air, indicted the economic conditions those same institutions were built to protect. The real demon in Medvedja wasn't the thing in the coffin. It was the combination of genuine tragedy, genuine ignorance, and the calculated decisions of powerful institutions to channel grief and fear into explanations that extended their own authority. Arnold Powley was just a dead farmer. The bodies dug up beside him were just dead. What was being buried over and over again was the question no one with power wanted asked. Why are people dying, and who benefits from us not knowing the real reason? We think we've evolved past this. We tell ourselves that modern medicine, modern media, modern governance has closed that gap. But every time a community's real health crisis gets explained by a scapegoat, every time an epidemic gets managed as a public relations problem before a medical one, every time people die preventable deaths while institutions argue about optics, Medvedja is still happening, just with better paperwork. So here's what I want you to sit with. When the next panic sweeps through, when the next monster is named and the next grave is dug, who is asking what's actually killing people? And who gets very, very powerful by making sure you keep staring at the coffin? If this kind of buried history keeps you up at night the same way it keeps me up, subscribe, because we're just getting started.